However, either way, it still might be worth waiting because in March of 2018, THQ Nordic and Nickelodeon announced a partnership where they're remastering a bunch of old Nickelodeon games. However, when I say remaster, I mean remaster, not a remake.
4 months later.
That didn't age well. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom is in my opinion the best licensed game out there, and that's not even an unpopular opinion. Tons of people love this game. It's just a really solid 3D platformer that makes amazing use of the SpongeBob IP, but even so I really never thought it would get a remake. It's just that licensed games almost never get remade, and it really doesn't help that most people immediately assume this game is bad just because it's SpongeBob.
Why did people want us to play this?
I don't know, dude.
This is not interesting.
I don't think we've actually gotten to the game yet.
But thanks to a combination of a surprisingly big speedrunning community and passionate fans begging for a return, in June of 2019, a full remake made in Unreal Engine 4 was announced by THQ Nordic. This really shocked me. I knew the game was coming back in some form because THQ basically said it would, but I was expecting a remaster at best, especially because THQ Nordic recently made quite a few of those, but no, full remake. Oh, and by the way, I know I spent the last few minutes of my original Battle for Bikini Bottom video talking about a fan reimagining. That project isn't completely dead. It did, however, go in a completely different direction. I'll get more into that later. I mean, I talked about it in my original video, so I kind of feel obligated to talk about it here, and it still looks pretty cool, so be excited for that. The official remake, however, was developed by Purple Lamp Studios. They didn't really have that great of a resume, which at first worried me, but then I remember the devs behind the recent Crash and Spyro games also had a very shaky track record, so I realized that doesn't really mean much. They even invited Shift to test their game, and if you don't know who Shift is, he's the world record holder in just about every BFBB speedrun category. The dude is insanely good at the game and has thousands of hours in it, so if anyone should give feedback on things like the controls, it's him. Seriously, massive respect for them for that. I don't think I've ever seen any other devs do anything like that. So in all, things were looking pretty good for this game. And now I finally have it. I honestly still can't believe this is a game that actually exists. Like, out of all the games I thought would eventually get a remake, like, Spyro was one of them. This was not. Like, my mind is still blown. Though I should say, this is not a full review of the game, as I've already did that with the original a while ago, and unlike my original Spyro videos, I feel like my original Battle for Bikini Bottom video is still watchable, so if you want my full opinions in the game itself, watch that. This is more of a comparison to the original. Oh, and I should say I'm holding the Switch port, but that's just because this happens to be the version I have that is physical. This video is focusing on the PC version, so don't worry, you're not going to have to deal with the inferior graphics. Though I will cover the Switch port at the end, as I tend to do with these videos. Anyway, video time. Like I said, this is a remake of the 2003 GameCube, PS2, and Xbox 3D platformer collectathon SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, and it's a really faithful one at that. The game itself is, well, Battle for Bikini Bottom. It's still a lot of fun and plays basically the same way, really with only minor alterations to the level design with one exception, and some small adjustments to the controls. The controls are pretty similar to the original, but there's a few noticeable differences. In my opinion, easily the best gameplay improvement throughout this entire game would be the camera. I never thought the camera was bad in the original, but if for some reason you wanted to aim the camera up or down, it was so overly sensitive that you had to, like, really tilt the C-stick very slightly in order to get a direction that doesn't aim directly up or down. While in Rehydrated, the camera controls exactly the way you would expect a modern game to control, and it is so much better. So as I made clear, yeah, the camera is a massive improvement, but the rest of the changes are a bit more of a mixed bag. Jumps are floatier to make platforming a bit easier. I know some people don't like this change, but personally I'm pretty indifferent to it. The movement is still tight, but I don't think it's as tight, so that took some getting used to. The bubble spin also doesn't seem to be nearly as effective for platforming. Apparently it only really works at the height of your jump, but on the plus side you can also do it twice in the air now, I didn't know that in the main recording. I only know it now because of a YouTuber I'll talk about later. Either way, since you have to use the bubble spin at the height of your jump instead of just whenever, it still makes things like Squidward's Dream a lot harder than the original. They also made SpongeBob's bubble missile a lot slower, which is kinda lame. On the plus side, all 3 characters can now do attacks in the air, with which they couldn't do before, which is especially nice for Patrick because he was just completely defenseless in the air in the original. The SpongeBob also controls way better. Like, oh my god, it's such a massive improvement. I was worried it'd be a little too automated after seeing this part in the trailer, but after playing the game, I think that's literally the only part that actually felt automated. You can also jump with it, which is a nice but pointless addition. Sandy's lasso swinging, unfortunately, is automated, making that a lot less fun. The bungee jumping also controls way worse, but there's literally one spatula in the entire game that requires precision bungee jumping, so I guess it's not a huge deal. But it still was a much bigger pain than it should have been. I think they mostly did a pretty solid job recreating the controls. They made some decisions I don't really agree with, but nothing that I think is all bad, and I do think they flubbed up a few things. But there's also some improvements, so yeah, that's good. I still prefer the original game's controls overall. The only part that actually felt like a massive improvement to me was the SpongeBob and being able to attack in the air as Patrick. But still, overall, the original still controls better. Everything was tighter, it didn't feel as clunky with things like the bungee jumping. But, you know, still not bad in this. They also made some challenges easier, which is something I found myself to be mostly indifferent to. I didn't mind that Robo Patrick now always faces away from the main platform when he's dizzy, making bubble bowling into him a non-issue, because the fight still retains most of what I enjoyed. I didn't mind them toning down the knockback, especially because it was super obnoxious in the original. What I did mind was eliminating all challenge in the Kelp Forest slide. They basically completely redesigned the slide to have way less sharp turns, and yeah, the original was a pain, but it felt so good to finally complete it. That satisfaction is just now gone. I will say at the very least, I do really like how much more dense it looks. The original is so much more fake looking by comparison. Like, this does not look like a thing you would see in any kind of jungle ever. But I especially hated how they added checkpoints to the second phase of the final boss. A massive reason why I loved that fight was because it was surprisingly hard, and the challenge just completely dies with constant checkpoints. Like, I hate to say it, but this honestly just ruins a fight. I get kids will play this game, but what's wrong with difficulty selects? I like an option to just, like, you know, revert the game's difficulty back to the way it was in the original. That would have been great. What's weird about this is they actually did make a few things harder. You can no longer cheese Mr. Krabs' dream, so I had to do it legitimately for the first time in my life. Tartars now immediately shoot at you once you hurt them, making me fight my own muscle memory because I kept them forgetting this and taking damage every time I fought one of these. Honestly, this one just kind of makes the game slightly more annoying. Kinda wish they didn't do this. You can't cheese that one sock in Jellyfish Fields, so you actually have to use the Freezy Fruit, which is something I haven't done in ages, and that one kind of makes me sad because I like sequence breaking in games. It just kind of makes stuff more fun, and they got rid of it, so they made the game slightly less fun by doing that. This one's probably unintentional, but I found Patrick's stun move to be nowhere near as consistent, so that one Mrs. Puff challenge is way more annoying. This one sucks. One thing I do think they really failed at is polish. Glitches are way too common in this game. I didn't have anything offensively bad happen to me, but the amount of jank this game ended up having is really disappointing. Hans freaks out at certain sections. Tikis don't always obey gravity or physics in general.
It was a stretch. I tried, chat. I tried to.
I love opening presents.
Is that normal? Is that normal? That's normal, right?
Plankton is in the Shady Shoals floorboards. For some reason, you can very easily play as one of the extra characters in SpongeBob's Pineapple just by warping there as that character, and you can do this. If you repeatedly stomp on an NPC as Patrick, you can endlessly increase their size, but this one's fun, so don't fix it. The audio in the opening and final cutscenes are desynced. There's constant texture pop-in whenever a new area loads in. This one in particular is super jarring. Load times in general are pretty frequent. I played this on PC, so everything was pretty quick for me, but they're a lot longer in console. I especially didn't like how SpongeBob has a tendency with his initial jump being heavily gimped on teetering platforms. This This issue really sucked, but it was thankfully only an issue a couple times in the game. But still, wow, that was really annoying when it was. None of this separately is a big deal, but altogether, this stuff makes me question if this is the best way to play Battle for Bikini Bottom. On the brighter side, the graphical improvement over the original is pretty immense. I've seen some people say Rehydrated looks bad, and I just don't see it. I'm not gonna say everything about this game looks perfect. I don't like the use of fog in the opening cutscene, especially in Sand Mountain, and there are definitely areas that I feel could look better, like Goo Lagoon Pier in Sand Mountain, but as a whole, I think this game looks great. It doesn't look as good as, say, Spyro Reignited, but this game also has a target frame rate of double what Spyro had, and the budget and dev team is significantly smaller, so I think that's fine. This game is so much more vibrant than the original, and that was apparently done to better match the newer episodes, and I love it. Just look at Jellyfish Fields, it's so much more colorful than the original. I love the way Goo Lagoon Caves look, it's probably the prettiest area in the game. Sandy's Tree Dome, man, I love the lighting in this area. Even Kelp Forest got a massive improvement. You can actually see everything. I still wouldn't say it's an amazing level, it still has a lot of design problems, but they at least fixed the biggest issue. They overall mostly kept every level pretty accurate visually to the way they looked in the original, so most levels are exactly the way I imagined them, with a few exceptions. Goo Lagoon Sand is way brighter now, and I didn't like that before because I just felt like it didn't make Goo Lagoon stand out as much, but then I remembered that's how it is in the actual show, so I guess it's more accurate now. However, the goo no longer looks like the goo from the show, so I guess I have to hate this game now. SpongeBob's Dream is probably the only other level that changed visually. The Skybox for each dream now looks very different. They all share a similar skybox, and I think it works fine for SpongeBob's and Sandy's dream, but I don't like it for Squidward's and Mr. Krabs' dream. I just don't like how those skyboxes aren't specific towards the theming of those dreams anymore, which I think they could have very easily fixed just by putting, like, I don't know, floating music sheets in Squid's dream and raining money in Krabs' dream. Oh, and the floating islands in Sandy's dream no longer look like Texas, and like, why? It was a small detail I was always a fan of, and to see it's gone is just kind of saddening. Like, did they not notice that in the original and that's why they're not here, or did they just willingly get rid of this detail? Obviously, the character models were given significant upgrades too, and I think most of them are great. Again, the designs changed slightly to better fit the more recent episodes. Except Mermaid Man, where they ironically changed him to his Season 1 design. Weird. Other than that, I think they all look good. Except kinda SpongeBob. Okay, this is gonna sound even more nitpicky than my complaint with Reignited Spyro, but I think they made SpongeBob too square. I know that might sound weird considering his name is literally SpongeBob SquaurePants, but SpongeBob was never this square. Not even the new episodes. Just compare his new model to his older one. It just looks weird to me. It really isn't a big deal at all, but come on, this is a remake of a childhood classic of mine. I'm gonna nitpick. The animations have seen an improvement as well. I always thought it was kinda weird how SpongeBob always had a smile on his face even if he was freaking out in the original, but he actually emotes now, so it's nowhere near as awkward. It isn't full-on lip-syncing or anything, but it's still miles better than what the original game had, since there's now multiple emotions. The movement in the cutscenes look a lot nicer too. It's not as big of an improvement as other remakes, but I wasn't really expecting that anyway. NPCs also dab now, so yeah. I used to hate seeing dabs or anything like that in media, but now I mostly kinda like it purely because I see reactions like this.
I think the fish is working out.
There's even some new idle animations that references some memes from the show, like that chicken meme or that one face from the first movie. Side note, I never understood that chicken meme. It's from a pretty bad episode and the format has nothing to do with the episode it's from. I don't know, maybe I'm a killjoy. Anyway, they added a ton of other memes and references aside from idle animations. Handsome Squidward now makes multiple appearances. Bold and Brash is in Rock Bottom Museum and not in the trash. There's this picture in SpongeBob's house, which is really weird when you think about it because that's not actually SpongeBob. So, SpongeBob just has this picture of some random dude in his house. There's even cave paintings of Primitive Sponge. That's right, Primitive Sponge, not SpongeGar. SpongeGar is from the Season 3 special, Ugh! This meme is from the episode SB129. Get your SpongeBob facts straight! Most of the added references are just portraits of various iconic memes or moments, so it's nothing too amazing, and honestly a lot of the time it really doesn't feel like it would fit in the context of the world. But it is nice to still see nods to this stuff. Even if I'm personally not a fan of most of the episodes after the first movie, I still think other people will get a kick out of this stuff. But I will say, they missed a beautiful opportunity to reference the episode Sailor Mouth here. I guess fancy talk isn't allowed in this E-rated game. Not everything is an improvement though. Characters no longer have victory animations after destroying robots. Sandy straight up doesn't have a double jump animation when swinging on dumb old Texas icons. And you no longer hop out of teleport boxes, which just feels kinda cheap. But thankfully I find that these are outliers and most animations are at least fine. The music has gotten an upgrade. It's largely the same as the original, just remastered to sound a bit better. Basically they added some instruments and kinda sorta made it stereo. I do think this is an improvement, but I also think it's pretty lame we didn't get any remixes to better match Rehydrated style. What's even lamer is they even reuse the voice acting from the original. This isn't an issue for most characters, but if you remember right, Mr. Krabs and Mermaid Man don't have their actual voices, and that frustrates me to no end. Now unfortunately Mermaid Man's original voice actor Ernest Borgnine has passed away, so in that case they can't get the original voice, but Clancy Brown, no, he's still alive and well and still voices the character to this day. They had the golden opportunity to finally get the original Mr. Krabs and replace the stupid imitation Krabs
Actor.
but instead, they soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled. His laugh sounds like a dog bark. But no! Nickelodeon had to be a greedy little bit and not pay Clancy again. Speaking of greedy little bitches and Mr. Krabs, the shiny object requirements for Mr. Krabs' golden spatulas were already the worst part of the original game. And, oh man, that did absolutely nothing else but just suddenly require needless, tedious grinding, and it sucked hard. But you know what they did? They made it literally 100% worse because now you need 108,000 shiny objects! That equates to over an hour of grinding in Goo Lagoon. Who thought this was a good idea? Why? This is legitimately one of the biggest, most dumb, boneheaded decisions I've seen in a remake. Like, I can't possibly understand why they thought this was a good idea. Like, seriously, what was the logic behind this? Purple lamp, please, lower the requirements. Thankfully, I play on PC, so I can easily cheese my way to sweet victory in future playthroughs, but for this one, I didn't, and console players are just kinda screwed now. Alright, I'm gonna stop the video for a second because they just released a patch like 2 days ago that lowers the shiny object requirements by a lot. They now brought it back to the original, which I still thought was excessive, but hey, at least it's not nearly as bad. As for added content, there isn't much. Really just this added horde mode, which isn't very good to begin with. You just hop on from island to island fighting waves of robots with one other player, and this mode is super unstable. I straight up could not get this mode working on the PC version. It would just crash every time I actually started, and I suffer from a lot of crashes and dropouts in the Switch version too, so yeah, I wasn't able to get much footage, and the footage I could get is from the graphically inferior Switch port, so sorry about that, I can do literally nothing about it. The first time I was able to play this mode was with some random person I got matched up with online named John, and he was the most uncooperative person ever. Move, John! Why aren't you going? Why did you jump off the ledge, John? Oh my god, do something! Oh. I see he left only a few minutes in. Thanks, John. Now I can't get any more footage. Except I can because a fellow YouTuber, TreyGamer58, reached out to me and asked if I wanted to record Horde mode with him. He also did a video on this game, so check that out. Anyway, I still wasn't able to get a ton of footage because his internet was being poop, but I was still able to get more. From what I gathered, this mode isn't good. The robots in the core game don't have a ton of depth, and that's fine because the core game doesn't have them as the focus. That would be the platforming and exploration. But they're the focus here, so it's just not a lot of fun. From what I've seen, it does get a lot crazier at the end. but you know, I wouldn't know that. Thanks, John! I'll give this mode a few things though. It's pretty cool it has online, and you can play as characters other than the main three, even Gary, which is still hilarious to me. They even added references, like Mr. Krabs has a swordfish head from the #1 hat episode, and Gary has a pair of shoes from that season 2 episode. All the characters play pretty similarly, only with a different attack, like Mr. Krabs stats forward while Robot Plankton has a projectile. This mode even references a lot of the unused content from the original game, like how the mode revolves around fighting Robot Squidward, and by fighting I of course mean pressing large buttons. What's lame about this is they originally advertised this as unused content coming to the game, so of course everyone assumed we were getting, you know, straight up new levels and stuff. But no, just references in a crappy mode. Really wish they didn't get everyone's hopes up like that by advertising it that way. They were apparently going to add these levels back, as you can see here with a very unfinished patch extreme, and even the arena you first see Robo Squidward in matches the one in the concept art, only for you to be abruptly warped out of it. But I guess time or budget constraints happen, I don't know. At least we still have that old funnier patch extreme. Even if it's not endless like it is in the original. I was honestly pretty sad when I saw the added invisible walls. Like, I don't know, I just think that added a lot to the joke, but whatever. Like I said, this mode is not very good, so I kinda wish they just straight up dropped this mode in favor of polishing up the rest of the game. But at least we can get the extra characters in the main game in the PC version. The PC version is overall really good. Obviously there's a lot of potential for mods, like we have stuff like Japanese Crash, Doodle Bob, and a Disable Hans mod. But the consistently smooth 60 frames per second and the non-existent load times are great too. My only problem with this port is there's no way to change any graphical settings aside from changing the resolution of the actual game. Apparently, just like Spyro Reignited, you can change the settings in a text document, but like I said in that video, that's stupid, that shouldn't be the case. But it's still not a huge deal. Anyway, other than that, the port is still really good. I can't really say the same about the Switch version, unfortunately. I've been hearing a lot of crap about the Switch version, and I don't think I agree. I still wouldn't recommend it, but for an entirely different reason than most that I'll get into in a bit. Most people are complaining about the graphics and performance, and I think this stuff is actually mostly fine. Graphically, it's mostly just minor downgrades. The only major stuff I noticed would be a much lower shadow resolution, and the draw distance on the grass is much lower. I especially find it funny in this part in Sandy's dream where there's this patch of grass that's just straight up impossible to see unless you go out of bounds. The frame rate is another sticking point for a lot of people, but with the exception of whenever an area loads for the first few seconds, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, I think the problem is that it's not locked to 30. So it constantly jumps from 60s to like the mid-20s at worst. The lowest it can hit, again, is usually around the mid-20s, and I don't think that's all that offensive. The problem is that it's just so inconsistent. Now, Sand Mountain is where I see the bad port everyone is talking about. This level stutters to a disgusting headache-inducing degree, and for some reason Tikis just look horrible sometimes. I think these low poly Tikis are supposed to be for the actual slide part for performance reasons, but they occasionally load in other parts of the level too. I don't know, just a theory. And honestly, all this stuff isn't really a huge issue to me. Aside from Sand Mountain, I think everything looks and runs fine enough. Again, not nearly as good as the other versions, but it's a Switch, what can you expect? But that's not why I wouldn't recommend this port, because I haven't covered easily the worst part. For some reason, if you walk in diagonal directions, you will more often than not walk way less than full speed. This is obviously a massive, almost game-breaking issue. Basic movement like this is so crucial in a platformer, and it's just so unreliable in this version. And no, it's not Joy-Con drift. I tested it on multiple controllers and even had another YouTuber come to me about it. The one I mentioned earlier, TradeGamer58. In fact, I used my Switch Pro controller to record the PC version, you know, the one where I had no issues whatsoever, and I would later use that for the Switch version too, and I did have issues there, so yeah, not the controller. I have no idea how an issue like this even happens, but until this is fixed, do not get this port. It's so weird that no one's talking about this. And other than that, again, I honestly don't think this is that bad of a port. Sand Mountain will be like the only offensively bad part in the game, and the rest I think is fine. Oh, and I actually almost completely forgot about this part. In fact, it's not even in my script. I'm just saying this as I go. But for some reason, the button mapping is different in the Switch version. You jump with A and attack with Y, and that is so weird. Like, because every other port, you jump where what would be the B button on the Switch controller. So, like, jumping from the two versions is just kind of awkward. I mean, personally, I had an easy time transitioning from one to another for some reason. And even ignoring that issue, that's probably just exclusive to me because how many people actually bought this game more than once. Having the jump button and the attack button be on two separate ends of the, the 4-button layout is just awkward. Like, why? And again, every other port isn't like that, so I don't know, like, that's just weird. I feel like this port is so close to being good. Like, if they just fix the button mapping issue, the weird analog stick sensitivity, and the entirety of Sand Mountain, and lock the frame rate to 30, or at the very least had an option for that, then yeah, this would actually be a pretty good port, but until they do those things, can't really recommend it, especially the analog thing. So yeah, that was Rehydrated. It's a pretty good remake, but I struggle to say it's better than the original. The original is just a more solid experience. Rehydrated definitely has the potential to be better with a few patches, but as of now, it's just not nearly as polished as it should be. Meaning the original is just, well, better. The original Spyro trilogy, as great as they are, were a bit dated due to being on the PS1. SpongeBob, on the other hand, actually aged a lot better due to being on better hardware, so aside from the graphics, there really wasn't a ton you can improve on. Rehydrated definitely got the graphics down, but it has way less leeway, so the fact it failed in other areas was a lot more damaging than it was for Spyro. Aside from the third game, I was actually pretty willing to overlook the lack of polish in the first two Spyro games in Reignited, even at launch. Because the game controls were so much better, the camera was better, and obviously the graphics were way better. So even with the lack of polish, Reignited it just played better. Rehydrated really only has the graphical improvement, and it's not nearly as dramatic. So as of now, I wouldn't say Rehydrated is better. Please don't misinterpret this as me saying Rehydrated is bad. No, I still love this game, and if this was like an original game that I didn't have like an older version that's more polished to compare it to, this video would be basically just me praising it. Like, yeah, it's not as polished, but it's still so much fun to play. It's still Battle for Bikini Bottom. I'm really just looking at this from the perspective of someone who has access to both versions. And yeah, again, I think the original is better overall. But with the right patch, I do think this could be better, and according to THQ Nordic, a patch is on the way. The problem is, we don't know to what extent it's going to be fixing the game, so I can't really definitively say which version you should buy. But what I can say is both are a lot of fun, and if you like one, you're going to like the other, so honestly, it's not going to be like the biggest decision you're ever going to have to make. Just know that if you decide to buy this before the patch, it's not going to be as polished as the original. But Rehydrated is obviously a lot more accessible, being on more modern platforms, and if you really like the modern graphics, then I guess Rehydrated is the way to go. It just depends on who you are, what consoles you have, and your preferences, I guess. But yeah, if that ever changes and Rehydrated does get like a significant patch that I believe makes it better than the original, I'll make sure to pin a comment, but I don't know when that's going to happen, so yeah. Before I finish this video, I guess I should talk about what happened to that fan remake by Slice Team that coincidentally had the same name as the official remake. Like I said before, it's not exactly cancelled, it just went in a very different direction in the form of Bikini Bottom Tales. BBT is a fan game heavily inspired by the original Battle for Bikini Bottom, with locations from previous SpongeBob games. I guess it's kinda like Sonic Generations or Mania, but instead with entirely original level design. The game has a lot more in-depth combat system, a co-op mode in the main story with an AI controlling the other player in single player. There's even some new robots, one of which takes pieces from previously destroyed robots to make new ones, which I'm bringing up purely because I think that's a really cool idea. I'm really liking what we've seen so far, and I especially love all the ink-related stuff. There's a lot of creative enemy design revolving around that, and as frustrating as seeing an official remake effectively making their game pointless must have been for them, I think this is for the better. While I do like some of the stuff the fan remake had over the official remake, like SpongeBob's model or the remixes, I do prefer that we got a professional studio to make the game instead. That, and I think making more of an original game is just a better option for them. I'm personally excited for this game, and I will probably review it whenever it comes out. If you like BFBB, definitely check this fan game out. Links to the YouTube and Discord will be in the description. Anyway, Rehydrated is done. Yeah, I'm happy about that. My problem right now is I don't actually know what I'm gonna do next. Here's an issue. There's a certain series of games I want to cover really soon, but I don't have everything that's required for the kind of scope I'm going for. So I don't know if I'm gonna have that by the time I'm done with this video. So I might end up doing something else. I don't know what that something else is. Maybe I'll do the movie game, which I know I'm not holding it. I promise I have it. I just don't want to bother grabbing it in my collection. Maybe I'll do something else. I don't know. I really don't. We'll see. Anyway, bye.